Most people don't have a motivation problem. They have an obedience problem. They don't obey their goals. They obey their feelings. And feelings are terrible leaders. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, what you're really saying is, my comfort is more important than my calling. Success is not owned by the talented. It's rented. And the rent is due every single day in action, not intention, not planning, not watching videos. Action. You don't get paid for what you know. You get paid for what you execute. If you don't consciously control your actions, your excuses will unconsciously control your future. And excuses are expensive. They cost you money. They cost you discipline. They cost you respect, especially self-respect. The difference between the life you want and the life you have is hidden in the actions you keep postponing. So the real question is this: are you the master of your decisions or the servant of your emotions? Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Motivation is unreliable. It feels good, it sounds good, it looks good on social media, but it is inconsistent. And anything that is inconsistent cannot build a consistent life. You don't need more motivation. You need more obedience to your own decisions. See, motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation says, I feel like it. Discipline says, I said I would. And those two statements create two completely different futures. If your success depends on how you feel when you wake up in the morning, you're already in trouble. Because some mornings you're going to feel tired. Some mornings you're going to feel discouraged. Some mornings you're going to feel distracted. And if your behavior is tied to your feelings, your results will rise and fall with your emotions. That's instability. That's weakness. That's why so many people start strong and finish nowhere. High performers don't wake up asking, how do I feel today? They wake up asking, what did I commit to? That's a different standard. Feelings fluctuate, commitments don't. The problem isn't that people don't know what to do. Most people already know what they should be doing. They know they should work out. They know they should study. They know they should build the business. They know they should make the calls. The issue isn't knowledge. The issue is emotional management. They are waiting for a feeling that may never come. Never. Let me give you a shift in perspective. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. When you build structure into your life, you eliminate negotiation. And negotiation is where dreams go to die. When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m., the motivated person asks, do I feel like getting up? The disciplined person doesn't ask anything. They move. There's no debate. There's no internal committee meeting. The decision was made the night before. That's structure. And here's what most people don't understand. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your self-trust. And when self-trust is weak, confidence disappears. You don't lack confidence because you're incapable. You lack confidence because you don't trust yourself to follow through. Discipline builds self-trust. Self-trust builds confidence. Confidence builds execution. Execution builds results. Results build belief. And belief reinforces discipline. It's a cycle, but it starts with structure, not emotion. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If you don't have a system that forces you into action, you will default to comfort. And comfort is seductive. Comfort tells you you deserve a break. Comfort whispers you can start tomorrow. Comfort feels safe, but comfort never builds capacity. Think about this. The reason structure works is because it removes the option to quit. When something becomes non-negotiable, your brain stops wasting energy deciding. You just execute. That's power. You brush your teeth every day, not because you're motivated to. You do it because it's structured into your identity. It's automatic. It's standard. Success must become that automatic. Action must become that normal. If you only act when inspired, you will always be behind someone who acts out of discipline. The marketplace rewards consistency, not bursts of energy, not emotional highs, consistency. And consistency is boring. Let's be honest. It's not flashy. It doesn't always feel exciting, but boring discipline compounds into extraordinary results. The difference between average and elite is not talent. It's repetition under structure. You have to decide that your future matters more than your mood, that your goals are more important than your temporary comfort, that who you are becoming is greater than how you feel right now. Because the truth is, your feelings are not commands. They are suggestions. And you don't have to obey every suggestion your emotions give you. Structure your day. Schedule your actions. Set non-negotiable standards. Remove decision fatigue. Make it harder to quit than to continue. When you do that, discipline stops feeling heavy. It starts feeling empowering. You don't need to hype yourself up every morning. You need to build a life where action is automatic, where execution is standard, where your word to yourself is law. That's when everything changes. Because when discipline becomes your default, excuses lose their power. Now let's go deeper, because this is where most people get trapped and don't even realize it. Excuses rarely sound weak. They sound intelligent. They sound responsible. They sound logical. And that's what makes them dangerous. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to sabotage my future today. No. What they say is, I just need more time, or I need to do a little more research, or it's just not the right season. That sounds mature. That sounds thoughtful. But if you peel back the layers, you'll often find something else underneath it. Fear. Fear of failure. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of being judged. Fear of not being good enough. And instead of calling it fear, we dress it up in logic. We give it a suit and tie. We make it sound strategic, but it's still fear. I'm waiting for the perfect moment. That's fear of imperfection. I don't have enough money yet. That's fear of risk. I need to learn a little more first. That's fear of exposure. And here's the thing about fear. It will always provide evidence. Your brain is powerful. If you tell it you're not ready, it will find proof. If you tell it the timing is off, it will show you reasons. The mind is a servant. It obeys whatever narrative you give it. So when you say, I can't start yet because I don't know enough, your mind will say, you're right. Here are 5 more things you need to learn. And by the time you learn those 5, it will give you 5 more. That cycle never ends. Excuses are emotional decisions disguised as intellectual conclusions. And because they sound reasonable, you don't challenge them. You accept them. You defend them. You even explain them to other people as if they're wise choices. But deep down, you know the truth. You know when you're stalling. You know when you're shrinking. You know when you're hiding. Let me tell you something powerful. Growth always feels uncomfortable. Always. If it feels safe, it's probably not growth. If it feels completely certain, it's probably not expansion. Every new level of your life will require a version of you that you have never been before. And becoming someone new is uncomfortable. But instead of admitting, this scares me, most people say, I'm just being strategic. Now, strategy is important. Planning matters. Preparation matters. But at some point, preparation becomes procrastination with good marketing. There is a difference between being prepared and being paralyzed. You can study business for 10 years and never start one. You can read about investing for decades and never invest $1. You can talk about getting in shape for months and never step into a gym. And every delay can be justified with logic. But results don't respond to logic. Results respond to action. The marketplace doesn't pay you for what you intend to do. It pays you for what you execute. And here's what's even more subtle. Excuses protect your ego. If you never try, you never have to face failure. If you never launch, no one can reject you. If you never step out, you never risk embarrassment. So the excuse becomes a shield. It keeps your self-image intact. But that shield is also a cage, because while you're protecting your ego, you're imprisoning your potential. The truth is, the pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. And excuses are seeds of regret. Every time you say not now to something that matters, you are planting a seed you will harvest later in frustration. You don't eliminate fear by waiting. You eliminate fear by moving. Action shrinks fear. Delay magnifies it. Have you ever noticed that the thing you were terrified to do often feels smaller after you do it? That's because fear feeds on imagination, not reality. The longer you imagine, the bigger it becomes. The moment you act, it starts to lose oxygen. So the real question isn't whether your excuse sounds logical. The real question is, does it move you forward? If it doesn't move you forward, it's not logic. It's limitation. You have to become ruthless with your own narratives. When your mind presents an excuse, interrogate it. Ask, is this truly strategy or is this fear? Ask, if I were braver, what would I do right now? Ask, if I knew I couldn't fail, would this still be my decision? Because most of the time, the answer will expose the truth. You don't need to eliminate fear before you act. You need to act in spite of it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement with fear present. Stop letting polished excuses rob you of powerful outcomes. Call it what it is. Face it. Move anyway. Because until you stop negotiating with fear, fear will keep negotiating your future. Let me shift your perspective on something that keeps people stuck longer than they should be stuck. Most people believe they need clarity before they take action. They think, once I'm sure, once I'm confident, once I have the whole plan mapped out, then I'll move. But that's backwards. Clarity doesn't come before action. Clarity comes because of action. You don't think your way into confidence. You act your way into confidence. Understand this. Motion creates information. When you move, you get feedback. When you get feedback, you gain insight. And insight produces clarity. But if you stay still waiting for certainty, you starve yourself of the very data you need to grow. Let's say you want to start a business. You can read books, you can watch videos, you can attend seminars, and all of that has value, but none of it will teach you what actually selling something teaches you. None of it will replace the clarity that comes from talking to a real customer, hearing a real objection, making a real offer. Action reveals what theory hides. The same is true in every area of life. You don't become confident in the gym by reading about workouts. You become confident by lifting weights. You don't become confident in public speaking by studying communication. You become confident by speaking publicly. The doing is what builds the knowing. And here's why this matters. When you wait for clarity before acting, you're often disguising fear as preparation. You tell yourself, I just need to understand it better. But the truth is, you understand enough to begin. What you're really waiting for is the guarantee that it will work. But guarantees are for people who don't want to grow. Growth requires stepping into uncertainty, and the only way uncertainty becomes certainty is through experience. Experience is earned in motion, not meditation. Let me give you something practical. When you take action, even imperfect action, three things happen. First, you expose your weaknesses. That's not a bad thing. That's a gift because now you know what to improve. Second, you discover your strengths. There are abilities inside you that you won't see until pressure pulls them out. Third, you build momentum. Momentum is powerful. It's easier to steer a moving car than a parked one. When you're in motion, small adjustments create big shifts. But when you're stationary, everything feels heavy. Starting feels hard, deciding feels hard, thinking feels hard. Action simplifies things. You say you don't know what direction to go. Move in one. You can correct direction while moving. You can't correct direction while standing still. And let's address perfection, because that's another trap. Some people don't move because they want the perfect plan, but perfection is often procrastination wearing a high standard. The first version will not be perfect. The first attempt will not be flawless, and that's fine because perfection is refined through repetition. Every master was once a beginner who started before they felt ready. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It's a product of action. The more you execute, the more evidence you gather that you can handle challenges. And confidence is simply belief backed by evidence. So if you lack confidence, the solution is not more thinking, it's more doing. You don't build muscle by visualizing push-ups. You build muscle by doing push-ups. And in the same way, you don't build belief by imagining success. You build belief by surviving effort. There's also something psychological that happens when you move. When you take action, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to. You start seeing yourself as someone who does. And identity drives behavior more than intention ever will. Once you see yourself as a person of action, hesitation loses power. Doubt loses volume. You start trusting your ability to figure things out along the way. And that's the real secret. You don't need to know everything. You need to know enough to take the next step. The next step will reveal the next lesson. The next lesson will reveal the next opportunity. But none of that is visible from the starting line. You can't see the entire staircase from the bottom, but you don't need to. You just need to see the next step. If you keep waiting for clarity, you'll be waiting forever. But if you start moving, clarity will start chasing you. So stop asking for certainty. Start taking steps. Because clarity follows courage. Let's talk about comfort, because comfort is subtle. Comfort doesn't look like an enemy. It feels like a reward. It feels like you've earned it. It feels safe. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Comfort will never announce itself as the reason you're stuck. It will whisper. It will say, you've done enough for today. It will say, take it easy. You deserve it. It will say, don't push too hard. And none of those statements sound destructive. They sound reasonable. But when comfort becomes your standard instead of your reward, it starts to quietly erode your potential. Your calling, the bigger version of your life, requires pressure. It requires stretching. It requires friction. And friction is uncomfortable. Think about this. Muscles don't grow in comfort. They grow under resistance. Diamonds aren't formed in comfort. They're formed under pressure. Character isn't built in ease. It's built in adversity. Everything valuable in your life will demand a season of discomfort. But most people try to build an extraordinary life while protecting an ordinary comfort zone. That doesn't work. You say you want financial freedom, but you don't want the discomfort of risk. You say you want influence, but you don't want the discomfort of criticism. You say you want transformation, but you don't want the discomfort of discipline. You cannot separate the reward from the requirement. Comfort is addictive. The more you protect it, the smaller your world becomes. You start making decisions not based on growth, but based on ease. You choose what's convenient instead of what's necessary. And over time, your standards quietly drop to match your comfort. Here's what you have to understand. Your comfort zone is not a place of safety. It's a place of limitation. Nothing grows there. It preserves who you are right now. And if who you are right now is not who you want to remain, then comfort is your ceiling. The version of you that can handle the next level of income, responsibility, leadership, and impact does not exist yet. That version has to be built. And construction is loud, construction is messy, construction is disruptive. You don't renovate your life without tearing some things down. Sometimes comfort shows up in relationships. You stay in conversations that shrink you because it's easier than having a hard talk. Sometimes comfort shows up in routines. You keep habits that don't serve you because change feels inconvenient. Sometimes comfort shows up in identity. You keep telling yourself you're just not that type of person because becoming that person requires effort. But if you stay loyal to comfort, you will betray your calling. And let's be honest, growth doesn't feel glamorous in the moment. Waking up early doesn't feel glamorous. Saying no to distractions doesn't feel glamorous. Investing in yourself when no one sees it doesn't feel glamorous. But those uncomfortable decisions compound. There is a difference between pain that breaks you and pain that builds you. Comfort avoids both. Growth chooses the second one intentionally. When you lean into productive discomfort, something powerful happens. Your capacity expands. What used to intimidate you becomes normal. What used to feel overwhelming becomes manageable. And that's how elevation works. The pressure that once felt unbearable becomes the weight you can now carry with strength. If you avoid discomfort long enough, small challenges will feel like crises. But if you train yourself to embrace it, even big challenges feel like assignments. Stop asking, how can I stay comfortable? Start asking, how can I increase my capacity? Because capacity is what determines income. Capacity is what determines leadership. Capacity is what determines influence, and capacity is built under tension. There's a reason why the greatest breakthroughs in your life came after moments of stretching. You learned more in difficulty than you ever did in ease. You discovered strength you didn't know you had, but you only found it because you were forced beyond comfort. Now imagine choosing that stretch instead of waiting for life to force it on you. When you voluntarily step into discomfort for the sake of growth, you gain control. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it. Comfort feels good in the short term, but it costs you in the long term. Discomfort feels challenging in the short term, but it pays you in the long term. The life you want lives on the other side of what you've been avoiding. So stop negotiating with comfort. Lean into the stretch, because your next level is hidden inside the discomfort you keep resisting. Let me show you something that separates high achievers from everyone else. It's not just discipline. It's not just courage. It's speed of decision. Wealthy, effective, high-performing people decide fast and adjust on the way. Average performers decide slow, hesitate longer, and then rarely adjust because they never truly started. Indecision is expensive. Every day you delay a decision that could move your life forward, you are paying with time. And time is the one currency you can never earn back. Now understand this clearly. I'm not talking about being reckless. I'm not talking about ignoring wisdom or counsel. I'm talking about eliminating unnecessary hesitation. Successful people don't sit around debating themselves for weeks over moves that require action. They gather enough information, they make a decision, and they execute. Why? Because they understand something powerful. Progress comes from movement, not contemplation. Some people are addicted to analysis. They feel productive because they're thinking. They feel responsible because they're researching. They feel intelligent because they're considering every possible angle. But at some point, thinking becomes stalling. You don't build momentum by contemplating. You build momentum by committing. Here's what indecision really is most of the time, and fear dressed up as caution. What if it doesn't work? What if I make the wrong choice? But here's the truth. Not deciding is a decision. And usually it's the worst one. When you don't decide, life decides for you. Opportunities expire, windows close, other people move, the market shifts, and you're left saying, I was just about to. High achievers understand that most decisions are not permanent. They're directional. You can pivot, you can refine, you can adjust, but you cannot improve what you refuse to begin. Think about driving a car. You can turn the steering wheel slightly left or right while moving, but if the car is parked, turning the wheel does nothing. Many people are parked in life, steering the wheel aggressively, talking about where they're going, but they're not moving. Speed of decision builds confidence. The more you decide and act, the more you trust your judgment. And even when you make mistakes, because you will, you gain experience. Experience sharpens discernment. Discernment improves future decisions. But if you avoid deciding, you avoid growth. There's also something psychological happening here. When you delay decisions, you drain mental energy. The unfinished choice sits in your mind, taking up space. It creates subtle stress. It keeps you in limbo. But once you decide, even if the decision is challenging, there's clarity, there's relief, there's direction. Clarity fuels action. Indecision fuels anxiety. And let's be honest, perfectionism often hides inside slow decision making. You want the guarantee, you want the assurance that it will work out flawlessly. But perfection is not a prerequisite for progress. It's a byproduct of repetition. Successful people would rather make a good decision quickly than a perfect decision too late. They understand that action creates refinement. You launch, you learn, you adjust, you invest, you monitor, you refine, you speak, you improve, you sharpen. But the sharpening only happens because there was movement. The world rewards velocity, not chaos. Velocity with direction. If you study highly successful individuals, you'll notice they don't dwell in hesitation. They trust themselves enough to move. They may consult advisors. They may evaluate options. But once they see a viable path, they commit. Commitment is powerful. When you commit, your brain shifts from should I to how do I? And that shift changes everything. Should I? Keeps you stuck in doubt. How do I moves you into solutions. The longer you live in should I, the weaker your momentum becomes. And here's another truth. You will never feel 100% ready. Readiness is often revealed after you step forward, not before. Waiting to feel ready is like waiting for fear to disappear. It won't. Decide, move, adjust, repeat. That cycle will take you further than endless contemplation ever will. Your life is shaped by the decisions you make and the ones you avoid. If you want different results, you need faster alignment between thought and action. Stop rehearsing possibilities and start executing them, because the moment you decide with conviction, your future begins to respond.